Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I had a viewer ask me about Athlean-X, who I did previously make a video disagreeing with, and he says, hey, is he right when he says that leg extensions can cause inflammation in the knees? To answer that question briefly, not just yes, but hell yes. I completely agree with him on this one. That is a big yes, and I'm going to break down why for you guys. So let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing, work on scaling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. And you know, that's the thing. When you listen to different people out there, people make this stuff too personal that when you disagree with someone, that it's saying they're a bad person. Or that when you agree with someone, that you must be agreeing with everything that they say. And that's why you've got to really watch that with internet audiences, because a lot of internet audiences out there, a lot of people are on the spectrum. Which means they're going to have very fixed black and white thinking. They're going to struggle with change. They're going to struggle with finding middle ground sometimes. And so people look at everything in hyperbole. So if you disagree with someone, it's a personal diss against them, or agreeing with them means that you just love everything about them and you must agree with everything they say. And you can't be that way. There are times when even people we look up to and respect are going to say things that we disagree with. There are going to be times when really terrible people get things right. That's reality. That's the real world. Well, in this case, this is a good question, and I want to cover this again because someone asked me this when I actually was on my list of stuff to cover was leg extensions again, because I realized I haven't covered that in a really long time. But I now have someone else on YouTube apparently who is saying the same thing, someone who actually has a physical therapy background. So this is actually important. This is very important, and I'm glad that he's out there saying that. Now, the reality is the leg extension is probably one of the worst exercises ever invented. I've said that in the past, and I've caught a lot of flack for it. I've caught a lot of flack for that. A lot of people didn't like me saying that. But the truth is there's a couple of reasons why. The biggest reason, obviously, the stress that it puts on the tendons. That is not a natural movement for your body. And a lot of people need to remember that. A lot of compound movements, people worry about big compounds hurting you, and they can, particularly with bad bar paths. Bad form, things like that. Big, heavy exercises can hurt you. But what a lot of people don't think about is actually a lot of little chronic injuries that happen are built up through isolation movements, because a lot of isolation movements don't move the body in a natural way. There are very, very few situations out there in the real world where you're ever going to only use one joint in your body under a load. That's not the way our bodies work. That's kind of a foreign concept to it. We would never do that in reality when trying to lift or move or push or pull something that had any significant resistance. You wouldn't do that. We've never done that. That's a new concept that's been developed in exercise world. That's never existed in a functioning world for us as a species. That's just not the way we're built. We try to use as many muscles as possible to get leverage advantages and mechanical advantage and everything else that we can to move something. Isolating a muscle or a joint sometimes works really good for that muscle or that joint, and other times it puts it in positions and puts tendons and things in positions they wouldn't normally do. With leg extensions, because of the way it puts the stress on the knee and the tendons, yeah, it can cause inflammation of the tendons, and he's pointing out, I guess, that the tendinitis will develop from that. If you keep chronically inflaming a tendon, it will eventually develop tendinitis. It can become a problem. That can really bother you in the long term. It can become a major problem. The other thing is you've got to look at the stress that it puts on the knee joint, particularly up there at the lockout. Our legs are not designed to do that. When we move or anything, our feet are usually planted on the ground. We're squatting up, we're pushing against something or doing something in that manner, in which we're pushing our heels into the ground. Our stress on the knee is always more of compressive stress, even when we're bent. It's not meant to be when the knee is locked out all the way at the top, that stress against the long lever against the knee. That puts unnecessary stress on the actual knee joint. So again, you get a lot of people out there will say things like, well, I have to do this or that because my knees hurt from squatting. Do you know that's the squatting that hurt your knees, or is it the stupid ass leg extensions you're doing that are hurting your knees and you're feeling it when you squat the next time you're in training your legs? Could it be that you've had a chronic inflammation happen, chronic inflammation over time from doing leg extensions, that all of a sudden your knees hurt when you actually put a real load on them because of the previous inflammation and damage you're causing to it with the leg extensions? How do you know it's the squats doing it? It's the same problem I point out with certain types of tricep exercises people do that inflame the tendons or your tricep, that then people complain when they're pressing that they feel it. It's not the bench press that's hurting your elbows on the lockout. It's those tricep exercises that are causing tendinitis in your elbow and in those tendons. That's what's causing it. Leg extensions are notorious for this, and it can damage your knee over time. It can damage your knee joint over time. It can also cause inflammation and eventually tendinitis in the tendons. Furthermore, when you start looking at knee injuries in athletes and people who are either running, jumping, playing on a field, doing various things, when people damage a knee, if there's a muscle imbalance involved, what's usually the cause? It's usually weak hamstrings. Humans tend to become quad dominant easily. This is a stronger problem for females. Women become even more quad dominant than men. That is actually something that should be taken into account sometimes with women's training. But humans can become quad dominant very, very easily, which means our quads will sometimes become stronger than our hamstrings. When you're talking about stabilizing a joint for performance or injury prevention, having certain muscles that are stronger or weaker than others can cause imbalances that pull on those joints incorrectly. They can predispose them to more injuries. Humans tend to become quad dominant easy with exercise, particularly a lot of running and jumping, a lot of squatting, other stuff, and we tend to not develop our posterior chain enough, particularly the hamstring. All right, that can predispose you to knee injuries. Most people need to actually get a little more hamstring work in than they do quad work. See the problem here? So if you're going to isolate stuff, why are you usually isolating a muscle in the body? For better muscle balance, because you have some muscle that needs to be developed more than what's being done with compound movements, and you want that one to develop faster than some of the other muscles that might be used in similar exercises, right? That's the purpose of doing an isolation movement, to play catch up, to give some extra stimulation to one muscle only out of a whole kinetic chain. Because all compounds are going to make muscles grow. Every muscle in your body can grow from compound movements. You're just trying to rebalance something out. Well, in your thigh, why in the world would you try to isolate and add more muscle to the thigh when that muscle oftentimes becomes stronger than the opposing muscle to the point of causing injuries? That's the last muscle you should be isolating in your legs. If anything, extra attention needs to be given to the hamstrings. If you are going to isolate and focus on a muscle in your thigh, the hamstrings need more work for injury prevention. If you want to not get hurt when you're out on a playing field, or damage a knee in different ways, or tear a hamstring running, having stronger hamstrings is the best thing you should do. So why in the world would you isolate the opposing muscle group, particularly isolate the one that tends to be strong enough to cause injuries due to the imbalance? Why in the world would you ever do that? You shouldn't. It's not a good idea. Not a good idea at all. And that's a secondary concern. Those others are a direct, immediate, this can hurt you in the long term doing it at all. This other is a secondary consideration. Now, when you factor in that you can damage your knees over time from doing the leg extensions, you can also get that tendinitis, which is a problem. You're already causing some damage. That's going to predispose you to larger injuries. Then you build up the stronger muscle in the opposing muscle group even further, making a muscle imbalance potentially worse. A muscle imbalance that's also known for knee injuries and causes knee injuries oftentimes in athletes. And you don't have to be an athlete to get injuries athletes get. You just have to run or jump or something in an emergency. You just have to jump and land the wrong way. Those muscle imbalances can get you hurt in those situations. So you really shouldn't be focusing on isolating the quads. And the truth is, a lot of guys will go, well, I just can't get big enough quads squatting. Well, why not? Well, because other muscles give out first. What, your core? Your back? Well, why don't you get a stronger core? Rather than come in and waste time isolating this muscle, why don't you fix the real problem, your weak core that's making you not be able to do enough sets of squats to get the quad development that you want? Because quite frankly, the quads are strongly stimulated in squats. All right, it is extremely strongly stimulated. And if it's not getting enough growth stimulation from training, it's because you have a weak link somewhere else you need to work on. Now, is the best way to fix a weak link to just keep isolating the strong point? Or is it to fix the weak link and strengthen the weak link with other training so that you can do more with your primary exercises, so that you can get stronger on them for more strength, so that you can get stronger on them, so that you can get more growth in the muscles you want to grow? That seems like a lot more common sense way to do it. It's probably going to be more effective in the long term. Probably going to be way more effective in the long term than coming in and trying to isolate that muscle. But long story short, I agree with Jeff on this, not just for the reasons he's saying, but for other additional reasons that make the leg extension a terrible exercise. I personally don't do leg extensions. I don't recommend that people do leg extensions, and you don't see them in any of my programs. There's a good reason for that. And so I'm very glad to hear that someone else out there who has a big voice in YouTube fitness is actually telling people, hey, this exercise probably not a good idea. Now, a lot of you who listen to me, now you're listening to me say this, and you might listen to and respect the advice I give. Well, you also see a guy like Jeff, who also has a physical therapy background, also telling you the same thing. At that point, you should probably listen. Probably be in your best interest to do so. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.